Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I am your host. And as usual, we got some great guests. This is Mr. Seth Barron. This brother's going to talk to us about his book, The Last Days of New York. He's going to tell us a little something about it, where we can buy it, and even really to some degree why we should buy it. He has a master's degree, Master's of Art in English Literature from Yale University. And he is the managing editor of I didn't get that right, the American Mind, managing editor of the American Mind. And folks, let me tell you something. I've done a little research on this guy. He's put out some pretty great articles. But we're going to talk a little bit today about his book, The Last Days of New York. Now, you talking about New York State, brother? You're talking about Manhattan.
Well, I'm talking mostly about New York City, but New York City comprises, it's the powerhouse of New York State, so New York State too. I focus on the city.
Okay, and I was looking at some things that had been written about you, had been writing in. I think you take the position. Don't let me put words in your mouth. That there is rising crime in Manhattan, and there's a lowering of the standard of living. But going into the Democratic Party primary, you're not hearing a voice for law and order, public safety. Is that right?
It's a little complicated, but I would say generally that's right. Look, at the level of, the voters, people have gotten concerned about rising crime. So as a result, in the last few weeks before the election, some of the candidates started, trying to get that vote and coming out and saying, oh, yes, I'm pro public safety. So for instance, the probable winner of the Democratic primary, Eric Adams, he's a former cop. So people feel like, oh, well, that's good, a former cop. What they don't realize is that when he was a cop, he was famous for opposing the NYPD and calling them racist and accusing them of a lot of, bad things. Essentially, he was kind of like an anti-cop cop. So, and like just a year ago, he said that he feels sympathy with the defund the police movement. A year ago, during a time, his name's Eric Adams, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
He's the borough president of Brooklyn. And he's a black guy. He was a captain in the NYPD, and he was a state senator. So it sounds like he would be like a good guy for the pro-public safety crowd. But a year ago, there were fireworks going off all over the city, just going off like crazy. And he said, if you hear fireworks and if you're keeping you up at night, don't call 911. We're past that now. We don't call 911 just for everything. We don't want to involve the police. Go out and talk to the people and say, hey, do you need a summer job? Did you graduate high school? And this woman in the pink houses, which is a, public housing, named Shatavia Wells, she took his advice and went out and tried to convince these guys to stop lighting off fireworks in the middle of the night. And she was shot 8 times and died.
Oh my Lord.
So even Eric Adams, he's supposed to be the guy who he calls himself the new face of the Democratic Party. And, people all over the country are getting excited that, oh, well, maybe the Democrats can recoup their damaged reputation on public order. But I don't think he's going to do a very good job. Let's put it that way.
Right. Brother, I'm here in Kentucky, and in my neighborhood, it's fireworks and automatic gunfire. Walking outside my apartment to approach them, that's suicide. I mean, that's me wanting to commit suicide. I can't believe he'd say something that daggone absurd.
Well, this is like a new thing I've noticed, and you hear it a lot from people on the left. This idea that the worst thing that you can do is call the police. That calling the police is going to mean that they're going to run in with guns blazing. They're going to kill whoever's around, especially black people. And so what we need to do is remove the police from these interactions. And we've heard this from the Mayor de Blasio's wife, Shirlane McCray. We've heard it from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and we hear it a lot just from up and down. They encourage people to do these bystander interventions. And they say, do this training, and it'll teach you how to intervene if you witness a hate crime or if you witness some kind of criminal activity on the street. But this is like terrible advice.
Yes.
People are going to get hurt. People are going to get killed. And the reason is the police are trained to de-escalate things. And they have an impersonal stake. They're not like coming into it like because they're angry or because they've been kept up late at night or they're mad about trash on their stoop. They're coming in just, as impartial outsiders. And that's the whole reason we have the police, to depersonalize conflict.
Right.
But the left wants to roll all of that back and pursue this whole idea of community-based justice initiatives. They have something called violence interrupters. This is what de Blasio keeps talking about. I don't know if you've heard about this in Kentucky. No. The idea is that you take like former gang members or trusted community people and train that and get them involved to go out and stop violence before it gets started. There's no evidence that it works. It's just a huge, boondoggle and a waste of time. But this is what they're pinning all their hopes on. And this is what President Biden is, recently he said, let's let the cities and states use COVID funding on public safety. But he doesn't mean on like policing. He means on community justice initiatives. So we're going to get more of that. You
had mentioned, like a minute or so ago, how one critic of the NYPD was, used to refer to them as racist. Was there any evidence that accusation, had some sort of basis in reality, that NYPD is systemically racist?
Look, maybe decades ago, there may have been some of that. Like in 1970, police officers used to shoot a lot of people. There's been rigorous and relentless training and professionalization of the NYPD since then. So at this point, I would say absolutely not. Look, here's the thing. What you hear a lot is, look at how many arrests the NYPD makes of like non-white people, like what they call black and brown, black and Latinos. Now it's true. Yeah, they do get arrested more for a lot of things. But at the same time, the rate of crime is much higher in that community.
Yes.
Like 98% of all shootings in New York City are done by black and Latino people. That's not to say that all black and Latino people shoot people. Right? That's not where this leads us. And the fact of the matter is the police do not go into black communities in order to harass the people.
Right.
They go there because that's where the 911 calls are coming from.
Yes.
Right? If you look at the 911 data, that's the people are calling and saying, there's gunfire, there's this, there's that. I got beat up, whatever.
Yeah.
So I would say no, there is no evidence that the NYPD is systemically racist.
Yeah.
You hear this all over the country now. Everybody knows the statistics. It's not rocket science. Like the number of black people killed by the police for no reason is like minuscule compared to the number of black people who are just killed generally.
Right. In my own personal experience, you wouldn't have to do no research on 911. You just look at my phone message and a number of times I called 911, not because my cat got stuck up in the tree. I'm telling you, there was automatic gunfire. I know what it sounds like because I used to be in the military. I'm telling you, there would be people outside. I've seen people being chased down the street by some guys with a gun and that kind of stuff. It's serious. And the refer to I asked you about the NYPD because I didn't know much about them, but you did. But as far as the Louisville Metro Police Department, there's no evidence that they're systemically racist. Absolutely none. And it sort of disgusts me that people throw that up there. And what is this? Now, brother, I know we're getting a little bit off your book here, The Last Days of New York. Folks, I'm talking to Seth Barron, the author of The Last Days of New York. You need to get this book. If you have any concern whatsoever about, what's happening in this country and what's happening in New York, you need to get this book. If you're concerned about public safety, if you want an informed perspective on things, get this book, Last Days of New York. Towards the end here, we're going to have Mr. Seth Barron tell us where we can buy it. Brother, I don't want us to get too off base, but for my listeners, what is defunding the police? Do they literally mean stop giving the police department money?
Well, it's really funny that you bring that up, because a year ago when the defund the police movement started, you heard a lot of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others say defund means defund. They were very clear. They want the police not to have funding. They want to end policing as we know it. Now, that's not to say that they don't want, any form of law enforcement. Obviously they do. They just want to be in charge of it. Local police forces are one of the few institutions in America that are not really under leftist control yet. What they now are saying is that, no, we never meant that we didn't want to fund public safety. We meant we wanted to invest that money in solving the root causes of crime. More social services, more education, more job programs. Now, look, I don't know about other parts of the country, but New York City spends lavishly on all of that stuff. Our schools are funded way beyond the national average, basically way beyond any other place in the country. I mean, per pupil. We have job programs. Not to just harp on her, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez last year said the reason why people are shooting each other is because, they need bread for their children or they're anxious about paying rent. Now, this is a very appealing way to look at crime. And the reason it's appealing is because if it were true, it would be easy to fix. If crime was just a matter of hungry people going out to steal bread, well, then we could give them bread. But the problem is they already have bread. No, but this is not what's driving the crime. This crime is driven by gang disputes, beefs, just real squalid, petty stuff like insults, perceived like turf violations. Right. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that this is what's driving it. That's why the Cure Violence people are supposed to go on and monitor Facebook to see who's beefing. So this idea that more investment is going to be the solution is wrong. And let me just add, you notice whenever the left says investment, they don't mean investment in the sense that you invest money in a capital project or a business that's going to reap dividends and have personal economic growth. No, what they mean is spending. Investment just means spending. They want more social spending.
No accountability?
No
results?
No. Accountability results. Look, we'll figure that out later.
Okay. I guess that's easy to take that attitude if it's not your money.
Exactly.
Wow, that's folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host here. And our guest is Seth Barron. He's the author of The Last Days of New York. And we're now going to, we've got to conclude the interview here. But brother Seth, I'm here in Kentucky. A lot of my listeners in Ohio and other places. Why should I read about The Last Days of New York?
Oh, that's a great question. And I've heard it a bunch of times. And I would say, as New York goes, so goes the country, especially if you're in a red state or like a city that hasn't totally embraced all of these crazy proposals. Trust me, it's coming. This is a nationwide phenomenon. This is funded from very wealthy people who are paying to get prosecutors' offices and all kinds of local offices taken over by hard left socialists who are all promoting the same